Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM channel 141. This is the Inside segment. I'm Harold Fisher. Keeping your head above the turbulent financial waters, from rising egg prices and the volatile stock market to government upheaval and tariff uncertainties, many Americans are preparing for the next financial challenge. So in times like these, what are the proper money moves to gain, maintain, and build financial wealth? We have a panel of experts to help us drill down on that question and many others. We will also preview an upcoming wealth building conference taking place this weekend in Prince George's County. My guests are Melanie Gamble, president of the Prince George's Realtors, Carissa O'Neill, she's a real estate attorney, and Philip Roy, a financial professional. I want to thank you all for joining us for this really important conversation, particularly in these difficult times. Let me start with a couple of fast facts. Black Americans possess $5.39 trillion in wealth. White Americans hold $134.5 trillion. And according to LendingTree, in 2024, the median net worth for Black families was $44,100. For white families, it was $284,310. Now that you are thoroughly pressed, let's talk about some of the issues concerning the state of today's economy, just from your own particular perspective. So, Melanie, I'll start with you.
So thank you, Harold. And again, thank you for having us here today. As president of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, the Prince George's County chapter or board, excuse me, I first want to just give a little history on our organization to help.
Well, I'm going to get to that. Because I am going to ask you about the roles that you play. But in order to really set the stage, I do want, kind of, your 30,000 foot view on where this economy is.
So in Prince George's County specifically, we are feeling some of the impacts of the government layoffs, the administration, how it is impacting, but it's more, I believe, fear-based. Not all of it is reality just yet, but there is so much misinformation, disinformation. The one thing that where we are different, because a lot of people ask, are we going to see another recession? Are we going to see another 2008? And I would say the difference is most homeowners have equity, where in 2008, people were buying homes with no money down. They really had no skin in the game. Most homeowners today, they have put money down because there were so many regulations put in place after the Great Recession in 2008 with Dodd-Frank. So lending looked totally different. So most homeowners who have homes today, they have equity. And as we know, homeownership is foundational to wealth building. So for the most part, I believe that with proper education, that's one of the reasons we're having an event on Saturday. Proper education, people can navigate these somewhat turbulent waters.
Philip, you were raising your finger about proper education. From your perspective, talk to me about just where you think the economy is. And certainly Melanie did hit the nail on the head. Fear is an understatement. A lot of people are terrified.
Well,
I am, and I have a good job, and my job is not tied to the federal government. So, in full transparency, this is these are highly unusual times.
Very. I look at this today, it's like we're entering into a place where we've never been. And most of us are not prepared because of the lack of knowledge. We have gotten comfortable, from back in the day. We can just spend and hang out and, we just work from paycheck to paycheck. When reality is, we have to save. Our parents told us to save for a rainy day, but that's not good enough, because a rainy day is just 1 day, 2 days. But we got to teach people, especially our people, how to save for the rest of their lives, because we're living longer, and society doesn't look good right now. The stock market doesn't look good right now. Nothing looks good right now. Nobody's jobs look secure anymore. And so the jobs that we used to call good jobs, now they don't seem to be good jobs no more, because people are losing these jobs. And so we have to learn how to build our own wealth. We have to learn how, because people have been doing this for years. But now everybody has to get to a place, because we're very good at spending, but we're not too well rounded when it comes to saving. And that's the key.
Well, when you speak of building wealth, that many of our ancestors have created and built wealth, created and built communities. And unfortunately, because they weren't preserving it and protecting it so that they could pass it on, is a big reason for that wealth gap. And, it's right now, yes, we're in uncertain times. Financial fears are real, but what we can do is protect what we do have. And so a part of that, oftentimes our biggest asset is the homes that we own. And so, yes, savings is important. Educating is important. But do you have a will in place? Do you have a trust in place? Is your deed proper, right? Some folks think that their deed is titled properly, and it's not. And then we have somebody transitions. They think it's tenants by the entirety. It's tenants in common. Now, when you think you don't have to go through probate, now you have to go through probate. It's an added expense. And so a lot of what isn't happening in our financial conversations is the conversation. Is insurance, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about insuring those who are likely, somebody said this to me yesterday, well, you were just blunt and straight to the point. I'm like, because we don't have time to sugarcoat things.
Exactly.
This is the way the wealthy get wealthy, stay that way. They're going to insure people who are likely to transition before they do, right? They don't have to pay the premium. That's something you can do, right? So there are ways in which we can get financially smarter, become more financially literate for ourselves, for the children that we're teaching, investing in stocks. What does that look like? We can continue, but I don't like to have just this fear-based of where we are. Oftentimes there's opportunity, right? So it gives people, I'm having conversations. I have so many of my friends who have been riffed and are in that process, right? So now they're like, oh, this is an opportunity for me to really do my passion at work. What's my passion? Okay, now I'm going to start this business that I thought about starting before, but now I'm kind of pushed into it. And so later, if I have an opportunity in sharing my story, Melanie learned it yesterday of, how me getting let go from my job then started me with, incorporating my law firm and my title company. And now 20 years later, here I am. Had I not gotten fired, I may not be here.
Melanie, you started earlier to talk about the organization and certainly speak to it, particularly in the context of where we are now, because at the risk of being, tone deaf to the things that Carissa was just speaking about, and I'm only speaking from, my perspective. If I had a good government job and was thinking about buying a home and then lost my job, buying a house probably would have considerably dropped way down on that list.
Yes, I'm sure it would have, but I'm sorry, you were asking
you were speaking about your organization,
right,
and what you all do specifically.
Right. So what I like to do when I start these conversations is clarify for people, because we hear the term realtor and then we hear the term realtist, and quite often people don't understand. So when we look historically, in 1945, World War II ended. So you had Black men coming home from the war not being able to find jobs, a lot of them looked to real estate. So in 1947, there were a group of real estate professionals who tried to join the National Association of Realtors. So when you hear realtor, those are people that belong to that association. Well, they were denied entry. So they created their own organization, which is the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, which is the one that I'm here representing today. That was in 1947. And to what you started out with, Harold, talking about the disparity between the wealth in the white communities versus in the Black community. So fast forward to 1950. In 1950, Black Americans' net worth was 15 cents on the dollar to a white person. Today, our net worth is 15 cents to the dollar of a white person. So our organization is just as relevant as it was when it was founded in 1947. And I think even more so, because what I say when I was talking about education, both Philip and Carissa hit on it. One thing that we don't talk about a lot in our community is investing. Because when I talk about the Great Recession, I think about Dr. Michael Blurry, who saw the recession. He saw it coming and he bet against it. He bet that all of these loans that were being granted were going to fail. And he literally made millions upon millions of dollars when the bottom did fall out. The same thing is happening now. I don't know if you guys are watching the news, but they're actually starting an investigation saying, were we set up? Because there were a lot of stocks being traded based on these tariffs that didn't actually go into effect, but people were betting. And so if you know how to properly invest, there are people even in Philip said, oh, the stock market is bad. Well, not for everybody, because some people were betting against that loss.
Yeah.
Some people were anticipating Amazon and Tesla losing shares.
Mm-hmm.
So again, for me, it's all about education, education, education. And that's what we're here for.
I do want to ask more about that, and we are going to get into kind of the meat of attaining wealth in the Black community, how to keep it, as well as how to use it. But I did, before we go to the break, briefly explain to me what's happening on Saturday. Where is it, and how can people participate? I've got about a minute.
Yes. So on Saturday, April the 12th, we are hosting the NARAB's Building Black Wealth Tour in Prince George's County. So the National Association, they are having a 100-city tour. We have 2 of those locations in Prince George's County, Ebenezer AME Church in Fort Washington, Maryland, and Reed Temple AME Church in Glendale, Maryland. We will start at 9 a.m. We will go until 2 p.m. And you're looking at 2 of our esteemed panelists right here in front of you. Philip will be with us at Reed Temple, and Carissa will be with us at Ebenezer. And we are welcoming everyone from the community, because this is a day to learn about what happens to Big Mama's house. What happens if you did get a RIF and now you don't know what to do with your TSP? Or your 401k. What if you do want to purchase a home? You just started a business and you were one of the fortunate ones and you have an amazing contract and you want to purchase a home. How do you do that? And one of the things that I love about what Carissa said was, this isn't just about purchasing a home. This is not another home buyer seminar. This is from everything in the flow of the transaction. If you need assistance with down payment, someone will be there to talk to you about it. And like Carissa said, you have a home and you feel like, is it titled properly? Am I going to have to pay an inheritance tax? I just finished watching Yellowstone, right? What was the biggest thing, right? What was the biggest thing that drove them to sell?
Taxes.
I've got to take a break, but for both of these events, what time are they, and can you just show up? Do you need to register?
9 a.m. to 2 p.m. We would love for you to register at pgrealtist.com, pgrealtist.com.
Okay.
But you can just show up.
Thank you so much.
Read Temple.
We are going to take a break, but don't forget, you can hear this and every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. The original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is next on WHUR. I'm Harold Fisher. This conversation continues on Sirius XM channel 141 and 96.3 HD2 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation about making money moves to gain, maintain, and build financial wealth. Our guests are Melanie Gamble, president of the Prince George's County Realtors, Carissa O'Neill, real estate attorney, and Philip Roy, financial professional. I do want to piggyback on something that you said before I go to Philip, Melanie, and because you were talking about someone who during the Great Recession was able to capitalize on that. The wisdom comes from interesting places, and I'll just say a personal story. So my mother now is 83. When I moved back here to the East Coast and was visiting her in Prince George's in Lanham, where I grew up, and we were looking at the new houses back in the early 2000s and the McMansions that were kind of springing up. And I remember I said to my mother, or I asked her, I said, how can these people afford these houses? And my mother, in her infinite wisdom, said, they can't. And she said, mark my words, a storm is coming. And she said that in 2002. The mortgage crisis at that point was still about 5 years away. And so, to your point, even when we look at where we are now, this event that you're having on Saturday, Philip, really is about preparing not for rainy days, but for the storm. And so I want to ask you, based on your experience, what's wrong with us and why we give so much pushback on educating ourselves beyond the old passbook savings account?
I'm going to say the mindset, because Belinda said it earlier about our ancestors and our great grandfathers and stuff. They was building wealth. I mean, when you look at places like Black Wall Street, I went to visit that place and seen and went through the history of it. Blew my mind. And I look at today when I interact with, especially my Black brothers, and trying to sit and educate them on building their wealth for themselves, start their own business. I ran my own trucking business for 25 years. And so when I talk to these guys about this, it's like, it's excuses after excuses. So the mindset has to be changed, for one. But it's like we have to present, because we do workshops. I'm doing workshops at least twice a week. We're doing Wednesdays and Saturdays. And then we do one-on-ones. I come to your house. You can come to mine. You can meet me at my office. It doesn't matter. We make it so convenient. We can meet at Starbucks. But people seem to think that, I hear so much that people say, well, that's just a scam.
Really?
Yeah, I hear it a lot. When you start talking about money, and here's the thing, we offer free education. We don't charge for our education. It's free. And we doing workshops all week long. Every day.
So let me ask you that. You said when somebody that you may be talking to says that is just a scam, what specifically are they talking about?
Well, when you start talking to them about insurance, for one, like Carissa said, insurance. A lot of I got a brother actually that refused to get insurance because he feels like this: when he dies, he dead. He don't. You know, I'm like, well, dude, okay, so you're gonna leave that burden with us. So of course, like I can't remember who said it. We took upon ourselves. We got the Joker insurance. He don't know it, but it's like, and insurance is actually one of the best and secure ways to build financial wealth. But there's different types of plans. You got to know which one is the right plan. I'm right now. I'm not just promoting it, but I'm a beneficiary of it because I have an IUL myself, an Index Universal Life, which builds cash for me, and I don't borrow it. I can take it out when I need it. You know, and it constantly grows. It increases more and more. I have annuities, but people don't understand. Annuities back in the day, yeah, they wasn't that great, but now annuities have improved so much. They have fixed annuities where you don't lose your money. Because, as a matter of fact, my wife is still in the government. She just lost some money, but a few years ago, we put her in a fixed annuity plan. We moved some of her money into that plan. Mm-hmm. And so now, even though she lost money, it was a relief for her to know that I had this annuity that's still growing for me. Mm-hmm. You know.
Okay. Let me ask Carissa this, because you alluded to this earlier, that there is no one size fits all answer when it comes to trying to figure out what to do with your money. How do you know, or how do you figure out what is best for you beyond not doing anything at all?
Great question. I would say, from experience and people that I've talked to, educating yourself, books, reading, YouTube. There's a lot of information out there on financial freedom. So for me, that's huge. Financial freedom. What does that look like? That's mortgage free, debt free. One day we're working to get there. But if I'm in this space now, okay, this is what I have. What percentage am I saving? A lot of folks think that they don't make enough to save, right? What percentage am I saving? If you have a home, it's a different path. Making sure you protect the home that you have. You know, there's insurance to cover the home in the event something were to happen, the home could be paid. What do you have your life insurance policies, any pensions, savings accounts, right? So doing a financial analysis of what you do have, what you have in those accounts, and then seeking the advice of an expert so that you're not trying to go at it on your own, not knowing. Oftentimes there are a lot of financial advisors. There are, again, free information. Philip's telling you now, a lot of banks, mortgage companies, financial advisors. There are programs, the FSC First in Prince George's County. That's an organization. So there are a lot of organizations that will give you free classes and information on finances and what to do. So it may not be putting your money in the stock market, right? It might be just starting with a basic will-based plan so that if something happens to you, all of your assets don't go to the state or go to whomever you don't want them to go to because you didn't, identify and you weren't clear about what you wanted to happen. And so a lot of times folks are just afraid. So kind of to the point that you asked Phil, people are afraid to talk about it. They don't have enough knowledge, so they're embarrassed that they don't know. We learn from what our parents taught us because there are no programs in school. We don't have financial literacy programs in school. Our race of folks, we don't have Saturday schools, right? A lot of other cultures have different schools where they're teaching these things. We don't have that. And so we're on our own. And so, sometimes it's just they don't know where to go. So then we have programs like yours where giving people resources and information so that they know where to go. So I say it would just start by asking for help if you don't know.
Melanie, what is your opinion about those, for example, who have lost their jobs, may have equity in their home, they may have prior to losing their jobs been in a pretty good financial position, but now they feel afraid, stagnant, because they don't know where the next paycheck is going to come from. And you spoke about, equity. At first blush, one would think, why pull money out and pick up another bill?
Well, I'm not encouraging anyone to do that. However, I would love Carissa to share her story, because her story is one of what happens when someone has a belief and they do have equity, and how they can turn that equity into investing and getting a really good return. I do encourage people, while you are employed and you feel like you may need a line of credit or some type of second trust, it's always good to do that while you are gainfully employed. And one of the things that I was mentioning when I said that a lot of us have equity is because in 2022, when interest rates were super duper low, a lot of people took advantage of that. So when you see a shortage of inventory, that's because a lot of people are like, I'm never moving. I have a 3% interest rate. Like I am never moving. And so that's why I say I don't necessarily encourage people to refinance their home. But if you find yourself and you think that, okay, I don't have proper savings, I believe I may be riffed, or as Carissa said, I have this great business idea that I want to start. A lot of times, unfortunately, in our community, we don't have the luxury of going to the bank and giving them a white paper or giving them this brilliant idea that we came up with last night. And they're like, oh, sure, I'll write you a check for that. Quite often, we have to self-fund ourselves. Or like I said, I'm going to segue right into letting Carissa tell her story about tapping into equity.
Yeah, and Carissa, please do let me make sure that we get the Cliff Notes, but please go right ahead.
Oh, absolutely. You'll get the Cliff Notes. Let go. Okay, so let me be quick with it. So I was let go in March of 2004. In May 13th, on my daddy's birthday, I incorporated both my law firm and the title company. September, a girlfriend wrote me a $20,000 check out of her home equity line.
I'd like to meet your girlfriend, but go ahead.
Didn't ask for anything. She got paid back. Well, hold on. She got paid back 60 in less than a year, because every person I went to invest in me and my company wanted 50% of the business for whatever, 1% for every $1,000. I knew that I was going to be successful and I was not going to give up my business for money. So she gave me 20 in September. She got 60 in less than a year. December, we signed our lease. In February 2005, we closed our first deal. So in less than a year from the date I was let go, we were up and running, and it's been 20 years. She didn't have to do it. She didn't ask for anything. She had it. She believed in me. She saw my business plan. She worked, we worked it out, and she helped make it happen. So Melanie just was like, wow, like if people knew what they had and how it could help someone, that's incredible. Also, one of the things, Melanie, I was thinking of is sometimes it's okay to sell your massive home and downsize. You have equity. So you're able to sell your home, downsize. We have multi-generations living together. Two people may come together. Hey, let's do this for a while. Let's, get this business off the ground. We can minimize our expense, minimize our cost. It doesn't mean that you can't buy another home at a later date. So often we have to use what we have, and it may not look the same, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It sounds like Shark Tank. In your experience, but I often wonder, and I want to ask you, Carissa, the same question that I asked Philip, which was, how do you convince our community, even if it's one person at a time, to change their way of thinking, from thinking that everything is a financial Tuskegee experiment, to let people really kind of simplify what is happening right now, in the stock market, in the bond market. How do you help people formulate a plan so that if they do decide to get a home equity line of credit, that they're just not doing it to secure a bag, but have a plan? Because it seems to me, and I've been having this conversation for years, and I ask the same people the same question. There is something missing, even as simple as establishing good credit. Carissa.
Yeah.
Communicating stories, examples, often examples of, do you know somebody who? I'm sure you can think of a time when, right? Remember when, you had access or knowledge of a family member that went through this experience? Do you want to go through that experience? Right? And so that's a big part of what we talk about in estate planning. Everybody has a horror story about when somebody transitions, what happens? That family member that hasn't been around in 20 years just pops up. What do they want? Well, did we plan for it? Did we communicate? Are we having family conversations? So when I'm doing seminars, I'm always saying, okay, now when you get together for family dinner, or Sunday dinner, or for the holiday event, somebody spark the conversation. Let's do a financial check-in. Where is everyone? Right? Check in on the neighbor, on the elder family member that owns their home free and clear, but they still have to pay property taxes. That's the quickest way for a house to be snatched, is tax sales. It happens every year. And so it's just asking questions, and then, let go of this happens to everyone, right? Life happens to everyone of all ages, financial, no matter what, entertainers, athletes. We've heard the stories of folks getting into foreclosure, losing their homes. But what happens is people are afraid to talk about it. So for me, what I do is we talk about it. I'm going to ask the question. Interesting story. I was asked to have a conversation of this sort at a dinner. I thought my attention, or the intention, was for the elders at the table. It wasn't. It was for a woman in her 40s who was afraid to talk about it because she felt like if she talked about death, she was going to die. Well, we're all going to die. So let's talk about it so that we can plan. So it's the lack of planning that gets us into so much trouble. And for those of us that have the knowledge, we just need to continue to freely have the conversation, and then people get more comfortable, because the more we talk about it, the more we ask questions of them, they have to join the conversation. And then hopefully at some point, some of it will get through. And it's telling our story, what we're doing, other stories of people that we know, looking at options. The Earn Your Leisure guys are doing a great job at it. So, for a younger generation, they're, doing a whole lot on YouTube. They have conferences. There's so much out there right now. And I feel like we're in a time where we are all here looking to build and uplift each other. So there's really no excuse. The information is there.
Philip, let me ask you this question on the opposite end of the spectrum as it relates to elders. Let's talk about young people, because a lot of them have kind of the same reservations, because the financial ignorance is something that is often learned. And so what do you believe is the best way? Let's take someone who is just out of high school, and they may be either entering the job market or going to college, without fogging things up and making them complicated. Where would you recommend that a young person start?
Well, a young person, I would first start them with the education, because if, just to put them okay, let's just say, okay, well, the money you got now, put it here, but then they don't understand what's going on with their money. Chances are when something tight comes along, because college come with bills, and if you don't have parents to help you, you'll find yourself working, spending money that you really don't have, getting credit cards, because I think most of us got so deep in debt with the credit cards when we first turned 21.
So what I'm asking is, break it down for me. Let me have a slightly older person. Let us assume that somebody has graduated from college and they've been able to get that first job. Give me kind of the ABCs of and some do's and don'ts for a young person.
Well, the don'ts, I would say, don't spend unnecessarily. Save your money. Go out and have a good time, but don't unnecessarily spend your money. Don't hang out just because you got the money to hang out. And what I would tell them to do with their money, I think the strongest platform to raise money in the insurance industry is the Index Universal Life. And what I would do with that, because most young people are visual. And especially if I know them very well, I'll show them mine. I won't show them all the information, but I'll show them how it's growing and what it looks like. Because sometimes people just need to see. You could tell them, but when they don't, like, okay, well, how I know it's going to work? But when you got one and you can show them how it's working because you have your own, and then it kind of makes it a little easier for them now to trust you if they don't know you, because now you're getting personal with them, you're getting transparent with them, and you're showing them something that you have yourself that works. Because if you start, and that's the key, because my 3 kids, I'm starting early, because if you start early, then you won't have to put as much money into it as I have to do at my age, because I started later. Mm-hmm. See, the earlier you start, the less money you will put out, and it's still going to benefit you in the long run. As a matter of fact, if I'd have started in my, let's say 25, 30, I would be pretty much a millionaire right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I always, too, for the young people, talking to them, start saving, even if it's $25 a month, have a separate savings account, have 2 accounts, that savings account you don't even touch, perhaps put it in a different bank where you don't even have a debit card or access to it. That way you can't touch it, so that they can save for an emergency fund, understand credit and protect your credit. That is very important. There are ways to build credit with secure credit cards. Stop paying attention to Instagram and Facebook lifestyles and that's not you. Stop buying pizza on your credit card. Look to, there are so many different budgeting ways. There are budgeting apps where you can link all of your accounts. It lets you know what money you have, if you're overspending on subscriptions, if you have too many. Mind your drinking, right? That's expensive. Right? Mind your outings. Yes, you want to go out and have a good time, but you also have to be very mindful of that budget. Have a budget and stick to it, especially in college.
Mm-hmm.
Those credit cards, those interests, those fees rack up. And if you can't pay it off every month in full, and young people, it's hard. They don't have that, that mindset to just pay it off in full every month. If you do, great. If you don't, maybe do a secured card where you load it up, spend what you have. When that's done, then you load it up again, because that's also a way to help you build credit. But credit is key.
Yeah, Carissa, your new trademark will be Mama Money. I will expect my cut from giving you that idea.
I receive it.
I wanted to.
I had a specific question for you, Melanie, if I can, because this is about real estate. And I was just kind of thinking about history right now. Today, your 30-year mortgage is close to 7%. As you mentioned, years ago, we're talking 3%. I remember during the 80s, we were looking at 14, 15, 16% with good credit. And so, with all of these things being ever evolving, what is the best smart advice that you can give to someone who is on the fence about buying a home, condo, single family, townhouse, right now it is scary. And as you know, there are studies that say that a lot of people don't often see the value because there's so much work in owning a home.
Yeah. So I wanted to jump in, especially when you're talking about the young people, because what we're seeing with young people, you have to remember the generation that we're dealing with. So a lot of younger people went through the recession and they saw their parents either lose their home. So they've experienced being displaced out of a home.
Mm-hmm.
They've experienced loss in ways that, we don't fully recognize. These children have grown up with going through metal detectors, people being shot. I mean, there's so much trauma that the younger generation deals with that oftentimes our generation we don't realize. So what I find with a lot of young people is they want to know how they can invest with their parents, how they can buy multifamily buildings, or how they can finish their parents' basement and live in the basement, or with like the legislative session, they just passed a bill about accessory dwelling units. So how can I build on land that my parents may have? How can I get a tiny home? The one thing about social media is that some people make it seem so simple. And again, we're back to education and doing your proper research, because the other thing that I have young people approach me about is, hey, I want an Airbnb. I want to buy a property and Airbnb it. Okay, well, that's great. But we got to make sure that the zoning will allow for you to do a short-term rental in, in that neighborhood. So there's a lot of research that goes in, but I will tell you that the young people, a lot of them are more transient as well. So a lot of them don't like to be tied down to a home. And that's why they would rather help their parents or their grandparents with their home, so that then they know that they have a place that they can always land. They have a place that they can use, for lack of a better way of putting it, for storage, right? Things that they don't want to travel around the world with, but they know that they're in safe place. But that's what I'm seeing with a lot of the younger generation. They're looking at ways to invest, and they don't look at real estate necessarily as their home, but as an investment. And really, if we can change the mindset, if there's one thing that I can change the mindset with people around, is that your home is the single largest investment you'll probably ever make. And you have to look at it as such. So to Carissa's point earlier, if you find yourself in a situation where you're way underwater, not necessarily with your home equity, but you're just underwater trying to make it day to day, talk to somebody. Don't wait until the sheriff comes and puts a notice on your door to say that you've missed, payments for the past 6 months, and now the bank wants to get their property back. So education, communication, and really just empowering themselves with, all the knowledge that's available. And be careful. I will tell you, because there's some people on TikTok that will have you in jail.
Yeah.
So
how about that?
Like, well, they told me on TikTok. I'm like, well, no, let me explain why that's not legal, and let's talk about it.
Yeah, you'll go from TikTok to doing time.
Yeah.
This is a great place to end this conversation. I am out of time, but I want to thank all of you, Melanie, Carissa, Philip, for sharing your insight. I appreciate it. Good luck this weekend as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Harold. We appreciate
Sure
you.
thing. That is the Daily Drum for this Thursday, April 10th.